Should work everything. Welcome everyone. Sorry again for the delay. We are ready here tonight to start our sixth webinar offered by the Alumni organization of the association BEST, that's called Best Alumni Network. And tonight we have here our Alumnus Boris, who is going to share his experience about languages, especially Esperanto. That's something you could become really passionate about. In fact, he's even become president of the World Esperanto Youth Organization, so he's one of the former presidents of that organization. And he's going to share his experience tonight. And if you are following this live, remember to write your questions or comments in the live chat. I see someone is already there. And if you have any questions, be specific, because as you know, there is a few seconds delay. So if you write something like, can you please repeat, we don't understand what you are referring to. So be specific. And Boris, do you want to introduce yourself?
So, good evening to everyone. So tonight I'm going to speak about me, my passion for languages and Esperanto. So actually I'm originally from Italy. I was in BEST in Turin, and now I'm living in France, in Toulouse. I'm working as an engineer, and actually I have a very multilingual life. In every day I speak 3, 4, 5 languages, and so some people call me a polyglot. And when I received the invitation to speak tonight, actually Celia proposed to me to talk about how my passion for languages drove me to learn and to speak Esperanto. However, it actually went in the opposite way. I did not have, when I was a teenager, a passion for languages. I'd say a little bit the opposite. So when I was a child, I had contacts with other languages. For example, given that my grandfather was born in Romania, the Romanian, it was used in my family like a secret language. A secret language when my grandparents and my mother did not want me to understand. And I also went to for holidays to Croatia. Well, actually when I was a baby, to Yugoslavia, later to Croatia. And I had contact with this language, with Croatian, Serbo-Croatian, as you want to name it, a few weeks per year. That it was not enough to actually learn it, but it was enough to feel the frustration to have a contact with a foreign language that I could barely understand. And then I started to learn English when I was a child, and it went quite well. I was quite good at school, but when at 12 I started to learn German, it was a trauma. It was really an unsuccessful experience. I did not like the teacher. I did not like the people that were learning with me. And this made me, of course, also dislike the language and to think that I'm not a gift for languages. I speak Italian, I speak English, and I could not learn any more languages. I was not for it. And I was a teenager quite convinced that that's not for me. Until an afternoon, I had, by chance, one page about Esperanto in my browser. I arrived there almost randomly surfing on internet, and that made me think. Okay, a language, but it's international. It's not a language of one country, of one specific people. And that's not usual. But more unusual for me, it was that this language has been constructed, has been planned. It was not the evolution hazards of the history. It was a project that has been done for a language. And so I started to read a bit about it. And the story of Esperanto impressed me. So think about 19th century. In the Russian Empire, a city called Białystok. Now you see the map of Poland because this city is now in Poland. But at that time, Poland did not exist as a country. And so in this city, there were, of course, Russian, there was Poles, there were Germans, and the majority was Jews. And these people really did not live very well along each other. There was some contrast, there was some prejudices, a bit of hate sometimes within these ethnicities. And so a boy started to think that what if we would understand each other? What if we would communicate using a language that would put everyone on the same step? And this guy was Ludwig Leiser Zamenhof. And he was a child when he started to dream about breaking the language barriers and to make the humanity be together, understanding each other. Then he thought about it as a teenager. He moved to Warsaw, he studied in Moscow, and when finally he graduated and he started to work as a doctor in a small village in the Lithuanian countryside, he finalized his project that was his dream since he was a child. And so this young doctor in 1887 published this first book. Of course, it was written in Russian because it was Russia the time, with an introduction to the language, with some examples. And actually it's interesting that even if he was a Jew, he put the Lord Prayer as the first sample, so something that did not belong to his religion, just to show that it was not something for his minority, but something for the world. And in a few years, this book started to be translated in French, in Polish, in German, in English, in Hebrew, in Italian, in Danish, and in a lot of other languages. And the language was free because he decided that it would be public domain and he did not retain any rights on it. And this story of a boy dreaming to unite the humankind in a peaceful way, giving to everyone the chance to understand each other, really hit me. And given that I've also always been a European federalist, I started also to think, why don't we have a common language for Europe? Because Esperanto is easy. We'll see later. I've studied several languages and I've never found a so easy language. But even more important, is fair. So it's a language that does not belong to a certain community, to a certain ethnicity, to a certain nation. So it can really be a common, neutral language for an international community, for an international group of people. And it's also free. So it does not only mean that you can find a lot of learning resources for free, but that it's not linked to a certain power. And I really find very, very interesting and important to have such high quality international communication with an easy tool and with a fair tool. But why did I say that Esperanto is easy? So, first of all, the alphabet. It's actually a variation of the Latin alphabet. Here I put the symbol in International Phonetical Alphabet, just in case that some of you know it, at right of the Esperanto letter. And you can see that each letter corresponds to a sound, and each sound corresponds to a letter. So it's not like English or French, where you don't really know how to pronounce a certain word when you see it for the first time. It's not even like Italian or Spanish, where normally you can understand how to pronounce it, even if with some exceptions. In Esperanto, when you see a word, you know how to pronounce it. And when you hear a word, you know how to write it. So it's incredible easier than most of ethical languages that brought the oddities accumulated throughout centuries of history. And also, as a European federalist, I really like the idea of a language that took words from the most important European language families. So the most often roots are the ones from Romance languages, because Romance languages are actually the languages that exported more words to the other European languages. And I think that you can recognize the meanings. Vino, it's from Italian, but it's almost the same in Spanish and very close to France, to other languages. It's wine. Maro, as in Italian, mare, mar, Spanish, mer, French, sea. Pantalono, trousers. Amiko, amico is also from Italian, amigo in Spanish. Piedo, the food, like piede in Italian, like pied in French, in Spanish. Or de is de from Spanish, di in Italian, de in French. Or iri, as in Latin, or as in Spanish, ir, to go. But then there are words from Germanic languages like biero, shuo, birdo. I don't translate because I guess that you can understand them from English. Hundo, that's from German, Hund, dog. Helpi, to help. Strato, like in English street, in German Strasse, in Dutch Straat. Fairo, like fire in English, Feuer in German. And there are also less, but quite a considerable amount from Slavic languages. Vodko, and I think that I don't need to translate. Kolbaso, like kiełbasa in Polish. Or chu, for making questions, as in Polish czy. Picho, that I don't translate, but I guess you understand. Pilko is also from Polish, pilka. Or pravi, like in Russian, pravda. It's to have a reason, or bulko, it is a piece of bread, like that's also from Russian, from Polish. From Greek, I did not find a name of a drink in Esperanto that comes from Greek, so I put hepato, but I think that you understand what does it mean. Auto, that's car. Ethno, ethnicity. Kai, and. Technico, technique. Or ido, descendant. So there are a lot of scientific technical terms from Greek, as in most European languages. And there are some words that are not from main European language families, but you can find them because they somehow became international. So I put makolio. It's not a very common word, but it's a Korean drink that I really like, and so that's I suggest you to try it. Tsunamo, that comes from Japanese, and you understand. Tui means immediately. Actually, this comes from a small European language, from Lithuanian. Boazzo, this is very interesting because it means reindeer. And it's the only word that I know in Esperanto that comes from Sami languages, so from the languages in the northernmost part of Europe. Halvao, from Arabic, I think that you recognize it if you like it, or ananaso, that is from a South American language, but we have it in most European languages. So even in the lexicon, I made some example here, you can find a very international, at least at European level, representation. But what makes Esperanto particularly easier is the system to create dissonances, to create words from the same root. So, for example, every noun must finish by O. So, for example, if I say manjo, it means meal. But if I add the A at the end, I can turn the name in an adjective, because every name that finishes in O can be converted. You can take a word and change the grammatical category. For example, manja is something related to a meal, to the food. It means, well, in Italian I would say alimentare. E is to create an adverb, and I would not find easily an adverb relating to eating in English. But in Esperanto it's easy. Mange. I. That's for the infinitive verbs. Mangi, to eat. And with the same dissonance, without any irregularities, you can create all the tenses. Mi manjas, it means I eat. And every time, all verbs for all persons will finish by us at the present. Mangis for the past, manjas for the future. And you have also the conditional, the imperative. So if I think about how much time I needed to learn, for example, the verbs in French or in Spanish, it's so wonderful. In 5 minutes, you learn the 6 dissonances, and you can conjugate every single verb of the language. 0 irregular verbs. I really liked it when I saw it. And I talked about dissonances, but actually you can create a lot of words also with suffixes, prefixes. So from the same word, from the same root, manj, that is mangi, to eat, manjo, meal, you can create here a dozen of words, and I could create another dozen that I did not put in the slide. So it's like playing with Lego. You can combine elements, roots, suffixes, desinences, with only one limit, that the combination will be meaningful. And if you are a poet, that's not even so important. So really, I find myself more at ease to translate from my language to Esperanto than the opposite. Because in Esperanto, I have a so huge amount of possibilities of combination to express a certain specific nuance that I don't have in my native language. That's just for the structure of the language. And so this is what made me start to learn. The ideals that I found in the language and that magnificent and that wonderful history, but also the fact that it's so easy. And actually, I started to learn alone. I started to learn using an email course. So I received a Word file, I made my exercise, and I sent them to someone to correct it. And I kept for a few months. And later, I discovered that in my school, because I was a teenager, I was at school, there was a young teacher who was an active Esperantist. And I started to meet her every Friday morning in the school break. I went to meet her. And she started to tell me about Esperanto festivals, meetings, international. And that made me think, wow, it seems cool. And so, after a few months, since when I started to learn, and I joined also a language course for free in a city 20 kilometers from my hometown, 1 hour per week. And after 5 months, I went to an Esperanto festival. And that was a wonderful, really wonderful experience. So here I put some 3 photos of Esperanto meetings that I participated to. So I really met a group of people united by a language, but also by some shared ideals. So I met people that wanted to stay together. I met people that wanted to share their culture. And even if I started to learn the language a few months before, I was fully able to communicate. I haven't done it, but I've seen people in the first Esperanto meeting, the first time that they spoke the language in person, delivering a speech. And I've never found in any other language that someone could arrive to give a speech after having learned the language alone for a few months. And I've been to many countries in Europe. I've been also to China, to Vietnam. That was thanks to Italian Esperanto Federation. When I reached the degree to be a teacher, I won scholarship to go to an Esperanto meeting in Vietnam. I went to Togo in the framework of a European project of capacity building, training people. And then I started to be active in the Esperanto movement. And it was since the beginning, since the first meeting, after 3 days, I've been elected to the board of Italian Esperanto Youth. And so for me, in these 14 years that I speak in Esperanto, that is a language, but that's also an ideal to work for. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot organizing festivals, organizing international gatherings. I learned a lot organizing them here in Europe, but also when I cooperated to the organization in Vietnam or in Togo. I've also learned to work online. That's something that not everyone was at ease before the pandemic, but for me, it's my life in the last 13 years. But beside what I concretely learned that it's useful in my life, I've also learned some values. So I've learned these values about international brotherhood. That was like the internal idea that Ludwig Zamenhof had when he created the language. But also more specific about languages, I've learned the value of language not only as a tool to communicate, but as something very closely related to the identity of the people, to the soul of the people. So in the international Esperanto meetings, I found very often people that have a very strong link with their local culture, with their regional language. And I think that if I would not have been an Esperanto speaker, it would have been very different, my Erasmus experience. Because, and now I want to talk about it, at my university path, I decided to go to Erasmus in Catalonia. And after 5 years as an Esperanto speaker, I found the confidence in myself that I can learn a language. And I found it so much that I decided that I could learn 2 languages at a time. And so I moved to a country, a territory, whatever you want to name it, Catalonia, that is actually at least bilingual. And I decided that given that I'm going to a bilingual place, I will learn 2 languages. And I've done it because I had, from my successful Esperanto learning, the confidence to learn languages, and because I've learned how important is the language for the people that speak it. I've met Esperantists from Catalonia. I knew how important it was for them, their language. And I really feel that I had a special experience because I was able to speak their local language. Because the reaction of the people when you speak their native language is often really heartwarming, especially when there are people from minority communities, from somehow minority language. I consider Catalan actually a minority language that succeeded to survive and to find its place in our century. So something that I really learned there after my Esperanto experience is that, yes, language diversity is important, and we can actually practice it and be part of the global strive to protect language diversity. And I would also like to say that when I arrived there, I knew that I had a community. So actually I had 2 communities, because I had Best Barcelona and I had the Catalonian Esperanto Association. And it's very nice when you move to another place that you find people that speak a common language with you, that want to share with you their time and their kindness. So Esperanto also made me travel in a different way. And after it, I decided, okay, so I succeeded to learn Spanish and Catalan. Now I can learn more languages. And it's not that I simply randomly chose a language, but I simply started to learn languages that were somehow related to my life. So at a certain moment, I had a Brazilian girlfriend. I started to learn Portuguese. Then I moved to Poland to work, and so I started to learn Polish. Then I decided I will move to France, and then I decided to intensively try to learn French. And so now I'm living here. I decided, given that I want to support language diversity, I could try to learn Occitan. And really, you don't need to be a tremendous, talented person. Personally, in my language learning experience, a tool that I use very often is Duolingo. I like it. It's quite simple to start, but then it can become quite challenging. And for languages that are quite close to your native language or to a language that you master really well, I think that's a very, very useful tool. So personally, I've arrived in France after having learned French only by Duolingo. And well, it was not like if it would have been Esperanto. I was not able to give speeches in French, but at least I was able to start my life in France. And knowing that learning a language by myself can give me at least the skills to search for a flat, to go out and to buy groceries, and to read and understand my my job contract. That was a satisfaction. I did it, and I did it by myself. So what is my experience with language learning is what is most important is to be consistent with your plans. So when you decide that you're going to learn, try to have a daily routine and follow it. I like actually sometimes to have a bit of immersion in my computer, and I switch to the operative system to the language that I'm learning, or my telephone or software that I can, or to listen to music in the target language, to watch videos in the target language. And actually, for me, it works. Of course, I had different goals, and I really felt that I've reached what was my goal in French, that I really could speak French when I succeeded to deliver a training in French. About Polish, I was happy when I succeeded to explain to the guy that was delivering pizza to me how to find my building and to which floor to come. Because, well, I've been there for a few months only, and I did not have the time to reach a higher level. But always you can find some targets that are rewarding, that can show you that you did not spend time unusefully, but that you reached something. So my suggestion is learn. My suggestion is learn Esperanto. It's also because it's easy and because it's very logical that it can be also helpful and propedeutical to learning other languages. So my experience is that after Esperanto it was easier. so I would suggest you to do the same. And this was my brief introduction. And in case you have questions, in case you want to ask something, in case you are curious about something in my path, I'm here. I'm really happy to answer you.
Thank you, Boris. Dankon. I guess it means thank you, but I'm
Yes.
cheating here because I know a few words in German. So, um, yeah, I reminded everyone in the live chat to type any questions or comments they may have. And I already see there is one, and I have so many. I don't think we have time to go over each of them. But I think it's very interesting that you mentioned that when you were in Catalonia, you mentioned protecting language diversity, right? When I say to some people who don't know about Esperanto, they don't know that Esperanto exists, and I tell them about Esperanto, they are like, oh, this is really a threat about for language diversity, because if everyone starts speaking Esperanto, then every language disappears basically, because when people start understanding how Esperanto, how easy it is to learn Esperanto, then the other languages will disappear. So it's a terrible project. So it's actually the other way around as you described it, right?
So I think that we are already in a situation where a lot of languages are dying. So 90% of the world languages, according to some studies, are at risk to die in this century. So it's not a potential risk of Esperanto, it's actually the current reality that we are facing a massive language extinction. In my opinion, what we need is a fair language policy. And for me, in this language policy, Esperanto is the best way to have international communication, but we need also a language policy to protect minority languages and to ensure that people have still the opportunity to learn in their native language at school and to see the local language actually used also officially, also for professional purposes. Because if we want people learn a language, we need to give a value to this language. And if we hide this language from a public sphere, these languages are totally at risk of disappearing. But on the other side, I think that an advantage of Esperanto and the fact that Esperanto is so easy, it means that people need less time to reach a fluency. And so if people need to invest less time in learning a language for international communication, you can have more time in the school curricula for other languages. And so in a well-planified language policy, something that should be done on the long term, I think that Esperanto can be helpful and not a threat to language diversity in a good framework.
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you, Boris. We have another question about, I'm really curious about the ideas you have about what is needed to spread a language like Esperanto, like the most efficient way, because it is probably the most efficient way to actually have a common language in Europe, which was the main dream of its founder. And if I can ask you to split the two answers, because I think there is something we can do at personal level, individual level, like simply learn Esperanto on Duolingo, for example, and then at a governmental level, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So yeah, there are two different, right? Two different
Actually, I think that's
actions.
an everlasting debate in the Esperanto movement about the suprismo and the subismo, so top-down or bottom-up strategy to spread the language. And actually, I think that both ways are somehow important and also have different perspective. So you can learn the language and you can share this with your friends and to talk about it. And this is something that helps make the language more visible and more used. And actually, you can really have, I think, wonderful experiences using Esperanto, being in the Esperanto community. On the other side, about the top-down approach, of course, in this moment, we lack at European level the political will, not only to promote Esperanto, but I think to touch language policy at all. I would say that it's like the Pandora vase that no one wants to touch. Unfortunately, because the status quo is far from being an optimal solution for Europe. What we would need is the political will to take a direction that is not this current theoretical multilingualism and practical oligolingualism with English, French, and German as the only working languages and English in a predominant situation. And of course, to take a different direction, we would need to change the treaties, because according to the current European Union treaties, the official languages are the languages of the member states, unless they give up, as Luxembourg, who gave up about the Luxembourgish language. So, on the juridical point of view, the way would be to change the treaties, and once they will be changed for a lot of other reasons, and that could be the moment to push for it. But what we need is the political will to give to Europe a language policy that would, on one way, put all the European, I would say, on the same step for international communication, and on the other side, to give a tool of communication easy, efficient, but that could be also a part of the European identity.
Understood, thank you. Going through other questions, it's interesting because there's a kind of a dialogue between participants in the live chat. So someone is asking questions, but someone else is already replying. So I'm trying to screen. Oh, by the way, I wanted to ask you, after how much time you became a teacher, because I know it could take even just a couple of years to become a teacher. That's impossible for other languages than Esperanto.
Well, I've started to learn it online irregularly, I think in March 2005, and systematically in October 2005. And I started to teach the language in September 2007. So 2 years after I started to seriously learn the language, I've started to teach it.
Yeah, yeah, couple of years. Wow, that's impressive. Other question. Oh, well, it's already been answered in the chat. But if you're not looking at the chat, maybe you have a different answer. What is the interest of Esperanto if there is no culture associated with it, or is there an Esperanto culture?
So the Esperanto culture exists, and it's not actually a national culture. But there are books, there is literature, there is music, so there is an Esperanto culture. The point is that it's something special because it's not linked to a country. It's a culture that evolved from contribution from everywhere in the world. But besides the Esperanto culture, Esperanto is also a bridge to other cultures that you can get in contact with through Esperanto. So yes, there is an Esperanto culture, but I think that the language should be not taught only in link to its own culture, but as a global language, and so a language that is linked to all cultures.
Thank you, Boris. And let me check. I've seen other interesting questions before. Oh yeah, it's fairly easy to start learning Esperanto. How do you make sure that students keep learning it until they are fluent?
Well, what I said before is that I think that's important to have a daily routine, and that's valid for every languages. So try to make your plans on what you are learning. We can't talk now about all the possible methods and all the possible way to learn a language, but my suggestion is start and don't be scared to start using the language. So you can go to a Facebook group or join a Telegram channel, or when we will not be in a pandemia, if you can participate to Esperanto gatherings and start using the language. And people will help you. People will tell you if you don't know a word. People will correct you. So start using the language and learn from your mistakes.
Yeah, that's good. Another question was, pointing out how difficult it is to learn a language if you are not there. So, for example, difficult to learn French unless you are in France. Of course, there is no country for Esperanto, but like you said, you get used to learn remotely, and otherwise, if you like face-to-face meetings, you have to find your local community, right?
Yes. So I think that, of course, it's always better, it's always easier to learn a language when you can have language immersion. There is no Esperanto country, but there were, before the pandemic, really a lot of Esperanto meetings. So I think that for Esperanto, this is not really a big issue because of the easiness of the language. But you can find in your local group, if there is a local Esperanto society in your city, in your region, or in international, national meetings, so there are chances to meet people and to talk.
Yeah, good point. Other question is, most people start learning, but then realize they can't really easily use it in the real world unless they attend these gatherings that you mentioned. Do you have any suggestion for them so they can start using Esperanto when they travel, for example?
So actually, I think that it's more, you can use it more often than you think. So personally, when I travel, I'm used to contact people, and normally I contact Esperantists from the place where I'm going. Often I find hospitality. Actually, there is the Pasporta Servo, that it's something like an Esperanto couch surfing, but created in the 60s as a small book that only, I think, 10 years ago became a website. So there is this network. But even if you don't find a host in Passporta Servo, you can write to a local Esperanto group, and you can find someone to meet, possibly someone to host you. And so this is, I think, a very good way to use the language. And besides that, you can use it online. If you are interested on a certain topic, you can join an Esperanto association on the topic, or a Telegram channel on the topic, and talk with other people that share with you the same interests.
Yeah,
There are many Esperantists that really like to chat, to talk a lot, so you will not have problems to find friendly people to talk with.
When the live is over, I will share some links in the description of this video, because some people are asking for links for this website that you mentioned that I cannot repeat, unfortunately, but I'm sure that if I see it written, I'm absolutely able to read because of the easy alphabet that's used in Esperanto. And also
I've written it in the chat.
yeah, thank you. And also some links about Esperanto culture they are asking. So in general, some reference links. But you can also share them with me later, and I can add the links in the description if that's easier. And what else? What about the app Amikumu? Is it really used to find Esperantists?
So Amikumu
I think don't say anything. I want to. It's a challenge for myself. So you said that Amiko is a friend, and Amikumu, it's the final letter is U, so it's imperative.
Yes.
So let's be friends, something like that.
Yeah, hang with your friends, do something friends. I can translate really Amikumu in English very easily. Probably a native speaker would have the right translation. And actually, it's an app that shows you the closest people that share a language with you. Given that it has born in the Esperanto community, I think that most Amikumu users are Esperantists, but you can use it also for other languages. And well, I think that it depends where you live. But for me, yes, it has been useful. So, for example, when I arrived to Katowice, when I moved to Katowice, I found that there was no Esperanto group in my new city. And so I found local Esperantists that learned the language years before via Amikumu. And then I started to meet, and then they called someone else that they knew, and so Esperanto life in Katowice restarted thanks to the contacts that I found in Amikumu. Or sometimes I was in the Netherlands. I was in the station in Utrecht, that is like the main station in the Netherlands, and oh, my friend is also coming. He's 2 kilometers away. Yes, mi venas tien. And so I met a friend that for random reasons was in my same station, and I've seen it thanks to Amikumu.
Thank you. What about official exams in Esperanto, like for the other European languages?
Yes, so there are many institutions that provide the chance to have an Esperanto exam. The most recognized one is a Hungarian institution that I think that propose the B1, B2, and C1 levels in Esperanto. You don't need to go to Hungary. There are Esperanto, there are sessions organized in many countries before. This year in internet, and you can pass this exam if you know the language. I think that I made the C1 a decade ago, in Italy, because there was a session in the Italian Esperanto Congress that year. So yes, there are, and you can physically or virtually get examined.
Thank you very much, Boris. Thank you to everyone who participated in the live chat today. And we are at the top of the hour, and so I will close the live now. But like I said, I will put more links in the description later. And feel free to reach out to Boris if you have any questions about Esperanto in general or passion for languages. And remember to subscribe to our channel, of course, to stay updated and attend our next webinars. And for more events, because we have not only webinars, visit our website, bestalumni.net, where you can also find our updated calendar and find all the links. Yeah, I think that's it. Oh, yeah, in the description there's also the feedback form. So if you have any feedback about this webinar, feel free to use it. And that's it. I think we can close it for... Oh, and check BAN podcast. Yeah, we also have a podcast on Spotify. So yeah, that's another thing that we have. Thank you again, Boris. And I hope this will encourage not only the current viewers, but also next viewers to start learning Esperanto and become very fluent and travel and use it.
I hope to. Good evening.
Thank you. Bye.